Okay, I think we are live. It says we're live. Hopefully, we are live.
Says live over here.
Okay, awesome. I am here with my guest, Christa, who is a money mindset coach, and she helps female entrepreneurs break through their money blocks so that they can earn their worth and be successful in their business. Christa helps clients get to the root of their subconscious sabotaging money behaviors so that they can make more money doing what they love. I'm so happy to have you here, Christa. Thanks for joining us and talking about money today. It's such an important topic. I feel like even if you're not an entrepreneur and like you're not really here because, money is a problem. I know you guys are here because you've got chronic pain, but a lot of the times I feel like stress and like financial stress can also tie into people having more pain. So even if you're like, I'm not an entrepreneur, I don't own a business, I'm sure that there are a lot of things that Christa will talk to you about that can apply to you as well to help reduce some of your financial stress. So thanks so much for joining us, Christa. I'd love if you can share a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. And you are so right. I think it doesn't matter. I mean, look, I niched into the entrepreneurial space because that was where I was. And you tend to work with people that are what you do, but it's everybody, right? And I'll tell you a little bit about my story, which I think will illustrate a bit more of that too, as to why it doesn't really this affects everybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're not. I think you come up against it when you're an entrepreneur, and then you have to deal with it. Where if you have a 9-to-5 job, you're probably still bouncing up against this stuff, but you're not realizing it the same way. And I got into money mindset work because, well, actually, I'll go way back. I grew up in Canada on the East Coast, so they're poor provinces. They don't have a lot of industry. They have fishing, farming, and tourism, but all seasonal. So if you're most of the work is in those industries. But if there's a bad season, everybody suffers. And most of the people that are in those jobs, they work them in the summer and then they rely on unemployment in the winter. So there's always this level, like sort of this underlying theme of struggling, and people are always struggling to get by and just not really striving for more, but just like chasing just to get enough. And it's always just to make enough money that you get your unemployment in the winter, just to get enough hours. Because if you get one of those jobs and you only work 3 months, you still need to pick up enough hours to get the unemployment. So there's this constant sort of like, it's funny because it's this huge hustle mentality, but it's not hustling to get like ahead. It's just hustling just to make enough. And growing up in that really impacted my views on money. But I didn't realize, because I grew up there and that's what everybody's doing, and you just move on with your life. And then when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I started as a nutritionist, and I went to nutrition school because I wanted to help people and I wanted to do good in the world. And I finished nutrition school and I hung up my shingle and I quote unquote started a business. And you think all of a sudden, all these clients are going to show up at your door and you're just going to help people 8 hours a day. And that's how it's going to go, which we now know is not what happens. And I kept coming up against like sort of these beliefs, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't move my business forward. I just wanted to help people so badly. And in order to help people, I needed to get people in, and I just couldn't really seem to like connect the dots. Or what was happening for me was I had this baby business. I had no clue what I was doing. I was taking 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. But what was happening was I would take 1 step forward and then I would sabotage myself and fall back a couple of steps. And it seemed like every time I got a little bit of traction, I would sabotage myself again. And I had this one time where I had put together this little, I think it was January. It was like a little healthy eating, kickstart your new year kind of a challenge. It was 4 weeks. And it was really successful. And it was my first kind of crack at making money online. And I had more people in it than I wanted to, than I was expecting. And it went well. But when it all ended, people were emailing me, asking me how to work with me, which obviously should have been a big success, except I was just so clamped up about asking for money that I would, okay, well, I'll email them back tomorrow. I was so uncomfortable with it that I wouldn't even email them back. And here's people that are trying to work with me, and I'm just like putting off, and then I put it off for another day, and I put it off for another day. And by the time a couple of weeks went by, like all the traction I built up from that challenge was gone. And I'm sitting here telling myself that I really want this business. And I wanted an online business for the location independence. And I wanted it so badly because it was the lifestyle that I had wanted forever. But here are people who are trying to give me money and I wouldn't even take it. Not only would I not take it, I was like, I couldn't even talk to them about it. And I got so frustrated with myself because, it's like, I'm just you're saying one thing, you're doing another, nothing is working. You want to leave your day job, but you can't make any money. And it was just sort of this vicious circle. And one night I sat down and I was just with a journal, just trying to dig into like, what is your problem? What's going on? And, I was just journaling and just kind of like that, asking questions and waiting to see what comes up. And what came up for me was I started writing, and the belief that the thought that came to my head was that I didn't believe that women should be successful, which for me, I was 100. I mean, I was born in the 70s and raised in the 80s. So, but I was born with a family that pumped into me, I can do whatever I want. I can have whatever I want. You can do whatever you want in life. And nobody had ever kind of subliminally put that message in my head. And it was just a really weird thought for me. And I started, to kind of digging in a little bit more, like, where would that come from? And then I started seeing pictures of like the 80s and the movies and the successful men, and they were all assholes, like real jerks. And they're away from their families all the time, and they're lying and they're cheating. And the only women that were in the movies that were working were like the secretaries who were just getting treated like crap. And, this was the picture of success that I had in my head, that you had to work all these hours, you had to work in a big office, you had to wear these specific clothes, you had to lie and cheat and steal. And of course, that's not how I wanted to be. That wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. That wasn't the person that I wanted to be. And I was just coming up against this belief that I had zero idea that I would have had. And if someone had suggested, like, maybe the reason you're sabotaging yourself is because you don't believe women should be successful, I would have laughed in your face. I'm like, no, there's no way I would believe something like that. That's crazy. But there it was. And that's sort of where I realized, like, wow, okay, I had no idea that was there. I started hearing about money mindset around the same time. And I was in a business group at the time. And I started hearing, like, going on the coaching calls, and I started hearing what my colleagues in the group and my peers in the group were saying. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's a money mindset. And it became really easy for me to hear them after that. And then I just pivoted, because I think entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, but I think there's so many people out there who have so many great ideas, and there's so many problems that only they can solve, but they're not solving them because they're holding themselves back, and they're holding themselves back for these like money reasons. So to your point, it's not just for entrepreneurs. It could be, you could be in an office job and you could have the abilities to be in a much higher position, but you're letting this money stuff hold you in a lower paying job. Or maybe you have solutions that would catapult your career, but you're keeping quiet because if I do that, I'm going to make X amount of money, or I'm going to be successful. And what's my family going to think? Or any other of a long list of money beliefs that are going to get in your way. So yeah, I think it's, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, it seems like our money mindset, and I guess what you're referring to is like our money story, the things that we've been kind of taught. It's not even told like with words, but just what we see in our environment, and that kind of creates our money story. So can you talk a little bit more about the money story and maybe why this is so important?
Yeah, so I think, well, I think I'll define it, because we hear so many. It's money mindset, money story, money beliefs, money blocks, and they're all very, very similar, with like a slight difference. So like a money mindset, money mindset, basically a mindset is anything, we're talking about money here, but anything you're talking about, and it's just a set of beliefs, right? And they shape how you show up in your world, what you believe to be true in the world, and it influences how you think, how you feel, and then which influences your behaviors. And that could be about money, that could be about weight, that could be about diets, that could be about career, success, family, raising your kids, like whatever it is. That's just mindset in general. And then when you talk about money, it's just your beliefs about money. A money belief is exactly that. It's just a belief about money. And then we have our money story, which is sort of a collection of all of it, right? So your beliefs, your money beliefs are driving your mindset. Your mindset is driving your behaviors. Your behaviors are creating the whole overarching money story that you have. And they're, the money stories can be, it's interesting because you could have two people that grew up in the same place and have very different stories because they have very different beliefs, and therefore their whole world was shaped in a different way. So that your money story is really just your personal narrative about money, but it is very important because that's what's driving all of your financial behaviors. So if you have a story and you grew up in, well, like me, I grew up in that town, and you know, the big narrative there was that if you have enough to get by, you should be happy. And that's that. And you shouldn't ask for any more. You shouldn't strive for any more because so many people don't have enough. So if you have enough, you should just be happy with what you have. And that's that. And that I carried that story well until my mid-30s. And, you know, I used to say, like, I don't need money to be happy. It was like a mantra for me. But the fact is I do need money because I do need things. Right. And it's like, but I used to literally go around saying, I don't need money. And that was like my thing. So that's part of the money story. And that's going to shape your financial behaviors as to whether you're saving money, whether you're going for a higher paying job, how much money is acceptable for you, what's your baseline minimum. For me, it was like, as long as I made enough money that paid my bills, I was good. I didn't need anything else than that. I'll struggle to make and find the rest, but I just needed to cover my bills, which was fine when I was in my 20s and you just needed a little bit of beer money on the weekends. But as you become older and you want more things and you want security and later in life and you want to have a retirement plan, like, you need more money, and you need to get rid of those beliefs that you just need enough, because then enough has to increase to, I need enough to have savings, and I also need enough to have retirement funds, and I also need enough to have this. But if you're not going to change that narrative, that story is going to stay the same and your results are going to stay the same.
Right, because our goals change as we age and as we approach different things, and like, we want different things in life. So of course we want to change our money story around those pieces as well.
Yeah. And if you're not aware of it, you can't change it.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing, like having that awareness about what your money beliefs are so that you can actually do something about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you touched on this a little bit already, but can you dive a little bit deeper into how our money mindset is actually formed?
Yeah. So a good chunk of your beliefs are formed by the age of 7. And those are more your like timeless core wound beliefs. So things like, specifically money would be things like making money is hard. Money is evil. Money is bad. Bad people have money, things like that. So those are the beliefs that are formed before 7. And those, for the most of our money beliefs, are going to be formed in that time. That's the imprinting phase. We now know that we can have beliefs that are passed down genealogically. So if you came from a long line of farmers or people who worked the land, you might easily have had a belief passed down that making money is hard because they worked really hard for their money, right? They had laborers jobs. Or we also, I mean, depending on your belief system, we can have beliefs passed down by past lives as well. And if you had a past life where you struggled for money, that might be something that came down. That, again, depends on your belief system. And then otherwise, it all comes through the imprinting phase, which is 0 to 7. And that's when you're going to get the influence of watching your parents, because you're a sponge, and that's all you're doing all day long is taking everything in, and you're building up your filters. This is how you're going to see the world. You're building your beliefs. And in doing so, that imprinting phase from 0 to 7, you're watching cartoons. You're listening to everything that your parents say, whether they're in the kitchen and you're in the living room or not. You're still hearing what's going on. You're still sensing the tone. They came in with the groceries and they were shopping, and now they're stressed. And that happens every time they go grocery shopping. And it also happens every time there's a payday. Oh, interesting. And then, you start to build that thing. Money is stressful. Money causes arguments. You start to build those beliefs. And then, I mean, for like, depending on where you grew up in the 80s, every cartoon had a rich villain, right? It was like Cruella de Vil was the only rich woman, but she was a villain and she was bad and she killed puppies. So like, if you're 6 years old or 5 years old and you're watching that movie, like, oh my God, why would I want to be a rich woman? Look at her. She's running around snatching puppies. Like, that's awful. So you're going to make a 6-year-old informed decision that people who are rich are nasty, and you don't want it. Then if you have a value system where you don't want to be a mean person, or you don't want to be someone who snatches puppies, you're going to be in conflict constantly about, do I want to be successful? Well, no, because I don't want to be mean. And then it's never going to happen. You're going to just, those two are going to cancel each other out. You're going to constantly be rubbing up against. So your mindset is formed from all of those interactions you have when you're a kid. And you can create mindsets after that, but they're not as, I find the money ones tend to happen much younger, and it tends to come from stories that were passed around in the family, things like that. Now, if you had a belief like it's not possible, like I'm never going to have a 6-figure business, that's not going to be one of those core beliefs that you picked up when you were 7, obviously, because you didn't even know what a 6-figure business was. That's very much an adult thought. If that's probably more of a negative thought, and you can probably get around that with some reframes. But those core room beliefs is where your money mindset, your money story is coming from. Yeah.
It's crazy how much stuff we learn before the age of 7. And it's insane. Just even thinking about how much our mindset actually influences our results and everything that happens afterwards.
And I had this conversation with a client yesterday because we've known each other for quite a while, and she was, we've known each other for quite a while. Her goals have been the same, and she keeps getting kind of blocked. And I was working with her on some beliefs and stuff. And I was telling her, I'm like, you've formed these beliefs before the age of 7. How much advice would you take from a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old? Right? Are you going out and taking financial strategy advice from a 3-year-old? No, but that's literally what you're doing, because that little 3-year-old inside you that formed those opinions, that's who's running the show. So it's, yeah, like you said, it's crazy how much we can pick up and how much it's actually affecting our results.
Yeah. So how do we start learning about I guess what our own money stories and beliefs and these core wounds are? How do we actually figure that out? Is that when we should start working with a coach?
Yeah, I mean, a coach is definitely going to help. I think as to when, as soon as you find out that money mindset is a thing, I think that's when you start working on it. Because if you're 40 and this is the first time you've ever heard of this stuff, now is when you have to start doing it. If you it's like everything, right? As soon as you know better, you need to start doing better. But definitely working with a coach is going to help you go really deep. It's going to help you isolate the exact limiting beliefs that you have, and then ripping them out. With my clients, we can isolate right down to one belief and get it out of the root, which is really cool. You can also start just digging in on your own. Like you said before, awareness is the big thing, right? So as soon as you have an awareness, you can start digging in. And I said a little bit about my story being that I just sat down with a journal. So I'm a really big believer in just sitting down with pen and paper, putting on some nice music, maybe on a candle, because it's uncomfortable work. If you're digging into your mindsets about stuff, your unconscious mind is going to get in the way and be like, oh no, we're not going to dig into that. This is what we believe. This is our belief system. So, set the stage, make it nice, make it cozy. Maybe you go to your favorite coffee shop, maybe you have a glass of wine, maybe you go to your favorite bar. It has nothing to do with tea, but you just get into a comfy, cozy, non-threatening space with yourself. And then just start asking questions. And, why do if I guess, first of all, start asking yourself, what do I believe about money? And just start jotting things down, listening to the first things that come up, and just start writing things down. And then from there, you can start going into, okay, why do I believe that? Where would that thought have come from? And then I find when you start asking the questions and you start poking holes in the stories that you created around them, a lot of times they'll lose power. Another good one is why would that be important to me? Why is it important to me that why do I want to keep this belief? Do I want to keep this belief? Just as many questions as you can throw at it when you find them. And then the second one would be, that's if you don't have any ideas and you're just sitting down. And the other one is to just start paying attention through your day. And I would say paying attention to how you feel when you're having money conversations, big one. Just use that as your guiding system. Wow, that's weird. Why did I get so weird when my neighbor told me about how much money they were making? Or why did it bother me that my neighbor got a new car and I didn't? Those kind of feelings are also a really good indication that there's something going on there. And then just kind of digging into why did that bother me? Why do Why is it that every time the mail comes and I know it's a bill, I let it sit on the shelf for 2 weeks and not open it? Why do I do that? Like just asking the questions, because you can't get answers if you don't ask questions.
Right. I love that. And I think that journaling is such a really powerful tool. I use that a lot myself. And I also recommend that to my clients and patients too, because you can even use that to figure out anything, like even your mindset around pain. So that's obviously what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. You can use that for anything. So I love that you mentioned journaling. It's a really, really great tool.
Yeah, it's a really good tool. And it's something that I think doesn't get enough credit. And then, or it feels daunting for people who haven't done it. And it does not have to be like, okay, so we've said the word journaling, and I find that'll send people, oh my God, no. Oh, it's like, it doesn't have to be a journaling practice. You don't have to do it 30 minutes every day when you get up in the morning or before bed or whatever. You can just sit down with a scrap piece of paper and just start jotting stuff down. Like, it doesn't have to be so overwhelming. Then if you like it, you can get yourself a pretty notebook and you can really dig in, but it can be really simple just to get started. It doesn't have to be, just you're having a bad day and you're thinking about something or something came up, just grab a piece of paper and start jotting down some ideas of what's coming to you.
Right. And I felt the same way when someone told me to first start journaling. I was like, nah, that's not for me. I'm not a big writer. I don't really like that. It was just, it's something that was not appealing at all to me. But I started off doing exactly what you said. It was just like scraps of paper. I would just start writing random things down here and there. And then it became to the point where like I needed to actually have a dedicated journal for all of that stuff. And like, you don't have to go back and read it. Like, it's not something that you're keeping forever. Like, you can burn it, you can tear it up, throw it out, whatever you want. It's just getting your thoughts out. And I think that practice of like actually physically writing with a pen and a paper, it hits a certain part of the brain, which is not really activated very often. And it's really helpful for so many different things. Like, it's a great tool.
Yeah, I think the pen and paper is another one that's just sort of underutilized now, because we all have the smartphones and computers, which if that's the only place you're going to do it, then sure. But like, there's something extra about when you do it with a pen and paper, for sure. Find you just access you can get a little deeper with that one.
Right. I totally agree. Yeah. So I guess we've talked about how to figure out what blocks and like what things are kind of standing in our way. What common blocks do you actually see in your clients?
So, I mean, I see a lot of things like money guilt is a big one. I see a lot people feeling really guilty when they make more than a certain amount of money. Everybody seems to have a set point, like they're enough when they've had enough, and then going past whatever that is. Like somebody's could be, like I said, just enough to make my bills, and then you feel guilt after that. Someone else, it could be like $50,000 a month, but after that, that's when the guilt kicks in. Like, it's just, everybody's got their own, but guilt is a big one. And the problem with that one is I find it ends up where you start to make more and then you sabotage it somehow. You either stop taking on extra clients, you lose the raise, you get the money, but you just blow it and somehow still have nothing more to show for it than just paying your bills, right? Like, you could double your income, but somehow you're still have the exact same to show for it because you're just feel bad about having that extra money. Lack of confidence is another one. Like, you feel like you just don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be rich. You don't deserve to have any more. You don't deserve to be more than just self-sufficient. You don't take risks because you're not sure that you're scared that you might fail. You don't raise your prices because you feel like you're already a fraud. That one shows up a lot. What else? Like, procrastination is another one. So you don't complete the money-making tasks. So you have a program or a business idea, but you're not finishing it off. It's almost there, got some ideas, but you don't finish it to the point where you'd actually be able to sell it. Or you creating a new sales page, but you've been creating it for 3 weeks and you just can't bring yourself to finish it. Answering the emails from clients that might lead to a sale, but you're secretly, you think, oh, well, one client, what's the difference? So you don't. Yeah, that's like the procrastination. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's another example that I have on the tip of my tongue, but the procrastination is a big one when you're just not following up with the money-making tasks. Or like me, you did something, you asked people to work with you and then you just clam up, or you never get them the link to book with you, or procrastinate. And then that can be actually for the people who are not entrepreneurial, like that procrastination can look at procrastinating going in and talking to your bank, not bank manager, but the guy who does the financial planning at the bank, and getting your financial house in order. It could be avoiding upping the payments into your RSPs. You want to be putting more in there, but you just avoid doing it and you're procrastinating. Avoiding collecting money from people is another one. You loan money out, or you have maybe there's a couple of clients that owe you money, or maybe it's personal people owe you money, but you're just procrastinating on collecting the rest of that money. Being financially tongue-tied is another one. Like, it's just impossible for you to have the conversations about money with your spouses, with your clients. You're not able to talk about your prices. You have a hard time asking anybody to invest in you or your services. And that's a big one. I find, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, right? Because everybody has a worth. They somehow have their self-worth tied into their money. And so that kind of puts that conversation, like, I'm not asking you to, for yourself, right? You're a chiropractor and you're not asking someone to invest their money in you. You're asking them to invest their money in themselves to get better. But we don't have that switch, right? It's like, oh my God, they're going to find out I'm a fraud because they're going to give me my money and then I'm not going to be able to deliver. And we just clam up and we don't do it, which ties back into the lack of confidence. And, another one of the big ones is like this hours for dollars, not being able to delegate. I have to do all of it myself. Whether you have the time, whether you have the knowledge, whether you have the skills, whether you have just the liking of doing whatever the odd job is, but instead of hiring it out to someone else and bringing in team members and outsourcing, because, those are kind of, if you bring that in, it's more risky and now you have to make more money. And, but what if the money doesn't come? And you kind of fall into that lack mentality. Better that you just stick to doing it all yourself and stay burnt out. Right. So like those are kind of not specific blocks. I mean, they show up, like that's kind of how it shows up. And that's what you should be kind of looking out for. And then from there, the beliefs can be anything from money is the root of all evil. Rich people are jerks. It's not safe to make money. My family will stop loving me if I make money. My partner will leave me if I make more money than him or her. Like those are the beliefs, but it shows up in all these ways. Working for peanuts is another one where you're just you're working for so much less than you should be, but you think that either, it's kind of like a huge symptom of having like that, not having a realistic set point of what you deserve. So you work for less than your worth. You work less than other people. Like, it's okay for her to make that much money, but it's not okay for me, even though we're doing the exact same job. And so, yeah, that's kind of how they show up. But then the limiting beliefs can be a long, long, long list of those. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like looking out for the symptoms and then finding the root cause, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the beliefs themselves don't make sense, right? If you, like I said, but in the beginning, if you had told me that I wasn't getting ahead in my business because I felt like that I had a belief that women shouldn't be successful, I would have laughed and I would have moved on with my day and thought you were crazy. There's no way that would have been there was no way. So the problem with going for I find when you start looking at the long list of limiting beliefs, and if you go online, you can get like lists and lists and lists and lists of them. And it's a couple of things. They either all resonate. Oh my God, a list of 103. And look at that. I have 101 of them. Or it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense. And your conscious mind, because your conscious mind knows, well, that's stupid. I wouldn't believe that. But it's not what your conscious mind knows. It's what your little 2-year-old self decided based on an argument that you overheard that you don't even remember happened. And that's the decision that was made that formed the belief. And then from that's where you start to see all of these symptoms. So yeah, exactly what you said, finding the symptoms and then working back to like, what do I believe here? Why would I believe this? Mm-hmm. Where would I have gotten a belief like this? Why am I doing this? Why am I why am I undercharging? And why do I feel like it's okay for her to make this much money and it's not okay for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why? Why is my favorite question. Just why? Why? And then why? And then why? And then more why?
Yeah, you can get really deep when you keep asking yourself why. I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
actually found out that I have a fear of being successful, which like you said, if you had just told me that at the beginning, I'd be like, that's crazy. Like that doesn't make any sense. But when you look at the root cause and like all the other things that kind of show up that prove that, yeah, you do have this fear of being successful. It's like, I have to change my entire life. I might have to work harder, or I might have to like move to a different place, or like the things that
Yeah.
you don't really want, like you're afraid of that change of what it's gonna take to actually get you to that point that where you want to be. So yeah, like I totally.
Yeah. It's that secondary gain, right? So when you have limiting beliefs, or like it's like when your mind's in two spaces, like part of you wants the success because you want whatever it is, whatever your reason for the success is, whether it's the money, the location, independence, to be able to help more people, whatever your reason for the success is. But then that's one part of your brain. And then on the other side, it's like, but I also don't really want it because then I have to do this, 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 and this, and this. And if you're trying to be successful in your business, but you have a belief that if you make money, it's like you have to work hard to make your money. Right. So I want to make more money, but I'm going to have to work a whole lot harder. And I'm already working pretty hard. That's like it's a secondary gain. What are you gaining by not doing the thing? Well, by not becoming successful, I don't have to work a lot harder. And you'll just stay conflicted in the two minds until you get rid of that belief that I have to work really hard to make my money. And then you can start to bring those two worlds together and be successful. But it's like, it's a lot of digging work. It's just all digging.
Right. And I actually find like this is actually really similar with people who have chronic pain, because it's like, you want to be pain free. You want to have that fabulous life where you can do whatever you want and you're not like in pain, but you're thinking about all the things that you have to do to actually change before you can get there. And that's stopping you from actually reaching your goal. So it's like this mindset piece it's so important that we work on it regardless of what we're working towards. I think that it applies to anything in your life, really.
For sure. I mean, change is hard across the board, regardless of what you're trying to change. It all is going to come down to mindset of whatever. Obviously, your money mindset probably isn't coming into play over here, but it's going to be another kind of mindset for whatever else it is. So it's always going to be the work. And a mentor of mine, actually, she said one of her lines, one of her like famous quotes is, how you do money is how you do everything. So if you're over here thinking about all the things you have to do to change your money, exactly what you said, it's the exact same thing as being over here and all the things you have to change about becoming pain-free. It's the same process. It's the same thing. It's just a different outcome.
Yeah. All right. So now we know what's going on with our money mindset. How do we actually start shifting our money mindset?
So I think for shifting, like I said, my favorite thing is awareness. Until you have awareness, like nothing else can happen, because like we were just saying, if you don't know that you have if you think you want to be successful and you're not being successful, you think you want to be pain free but you're not being pain free, and there's something underneath there that's holding you back from that, you can go to all the chiropractors and all the business coaches in the world, but you're never going to get the results because this thing is over here keeping you down. So the awareness is key. How you get the awareness, like I said, working with a coach is obviously a really great way. Working with a chiropractor, healthcare professional, like whatever kind of coaching they do. And then from at home is just asking, like really, really, really asking those questions. And they can be tricky because you don't know what you don't know. But if you're listening to this and you're here and you now know that like money mindsets exist and money stories exist and money blocks exist and negative mindsets exist, and you have an idea of where they come from because they came from your childhood. So now you have enough of a basis that you can start formulating some hypothesis, right? You can start thinking about how this comes. And you know that all this stuff comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And you also know that it's holding you back in all kinds of ways. So with that knowledge, you can start looking for where it's showing up in your life by thinking like, where do I want to be? At what part of my life do I want to be here? And I feel like I'm over here and I feel like I'm struggling to get somewhere else. And if that's money, then I go, okay, so what is it, it gets just back to the questions, right? Like paying attention to how you feel when people are talking about money, paying attention to how you feel when you pay your bills, pay attention to how you feel when you have to ask somebody for money, whether that's a partner or a client or whatever, but when you're getting in one of those kind of conversations, just paying attention to how you feel. That's a big one. Paying attention to how you feel when other people are talking about money. Maybe it's not about you and your money, but it's other people talking about their money, because you might be in a conversation with your neighbors and they're talking about renovating their house and they're dropping $150,000 on a reno and they just bought a new car, and you're like, how are they doing all that? Right? But if that's how you're feeling, you're like, oh, it must be good for some. If that's the words you're hearing, there's something there. If you're feeling something other than just happy for them, that they're going, like, it's their house, it's their car, you don't have anything to do with it. It has nothing to do with your life. I mean, unless they're like attached neighbor, and maybe those renos are really going to bother your life. But, if you're not feeling anything other than happiness for them, then there's something there. And it's probably something like, well, it must be nice for some. It must be nice for some people to have that kind of money, but I don't. And that's where you can start digging into that. Well, why does that bother me? Why is it important to me? Why does it matter to me what they're doing? And just start digging, trying it down. And what you want to distill it down to, if you can, is a very succinct core belief that you could hear your grandmother say, that you could hear a 7-year-old say. I mean, with money, obviously, it's not going to be things like, they're not going to be out talking about retirement funds, but they would have a belief that making money is hard. They would have a belief that you have to be really responsible with your money. They would have a belief that money is bad or money is evil, or like they could have picked that up, and that's what you want to listen to. And if you can get it down to that belief, like you've hit down. And then from there, you want to just start looking at building up the evidence that it's not true. So if you think about this, how I like to think about it in my head. So a belief was born at 7, and it was before the age of 7. So let's say something happened and you were 2, and somebody came in, your dad came in, and he was like, oh, that neighbor across the street, he's such a jerk, all the money. And you're like, oh, and you just reach down and you pull out a file folder, and your money, people with money are jerks, and you write it on the top and you put it away. And now for the rest of your life, you're going to go through life, and every little piece of evidence you collect that shows that people with money are jerks, you're just going to put it in that file folder. And now you're in your 40s and you've got a file folder this big full of evidence that people with money are jerks. So if you're doing all this digging work and you dig it all down and you get down to like, oh, look, I think people with money are jerks. Now what you need to do is try and get rid of that belief, right? So you can just try and disprove it, try and reframe it. Like, do I think that's true? No. Would it really be true? No. And then you'll start listening for where where it starts to show up for you. And you'll be like, yeah, okay, but that's not true anymore, because we thought about that and we don't really believe that people with money are jerks. Go online and look at like people who are doing good things with their money. Okay, so there's some evidence in the new folder that people with money aren't jerks. And then you start putting it in there. You could do something good with your money. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm not a jerk and I'm doing something good with my money. Okay, and that starts to build up the evidence against it. And really there's lots of techniques that we can do. There's things that I do with my clients, but if you're just kind of doing this at home and you just want to become aware, that's the really kind of what it comes down to, is really figuring out what the belief is and then start listening for it. Start trying to catch yourself when it's creeping up for you. Try and build up the evidence, stack the evidence against the belief so that it's eventually, starts to weigh out a little bit. And then you start to disprove it for yourself. And I think one of the biggest things too is just really, you can get into like a daily practice with journaling and digging into your stories, but really it's about building up the evidence of the new belief and just start listening out too. Once you start to hear these things, you'll start to hear them in everybody else. And then it's not just happening in your mind. And it's easier when you start to catch the other people doing it. Because you're like, oh, I bet you that's a money belief. And then you can say, do I have that money belief? No. Or yes. And then you can dig into yours again. But once you become aware of it, it's everywhere. Yeah.
I love that. Those are really helpful tips. I think I'm going to start actually doing some of those things today myself, because even as you were speaking and like talking about all the common things that you see, I'm like, yep, have that. So yeah.
It's money. Money is everywhere. And regardless of what your stance is on it, I don't need money. I don't care about money. You cannot care about money till the cows come home. You still need it every single day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So it doesn't like, it just, it's all around us. So these beliefs and you have a lifetime of evidence. And then most of it, half the time, it's not even going to be your beliefs either. It's because you could be in a very different position financially than your parents were, but you're still running through life with your parents' beliefs. And because that's just what you picked up on when you were a kid. So it's really being able to examine them, like, and then deciding, like, do I want this belief to come forward with me? Because it doesn't have to, right? And that's how you start to change your money story, as opposed to just you're isolating your beliefs and trying to like disprove the beliefs. But when you start deciding like, okay, well, this belief really doesn't serve me, so I think we're just going to leave that one here and we're going to move forward. And maybe we're going to like find a better belief. Money is the root of all evil, or everybody who has money is jerks. Like, no, people do a lot of really good things with money. And you start looking for more examples of that. And then you start maybe hanging out with people who do that. And now you're hanging out with people who make more money and they do good things with their money. And now you make more money. And now you do good things with your money. And your whole money story changes in a much better direction.
Mm-hmm. That just reminded me of like a quote. Isn't it something to do with like the 5 people that you surround yourself with, what determines your success or something like that?
Yeah. It's you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's like, so it doesn't matter what you're doing. If it's health or if you want to lose weight, you better be hanging around with people who are that being in shape and eating healthy is a priority, because you're never going to be able to do it if you're hanging around with people who, McDonald's all day, every day.
Right. That's not their priority.
Yeah, exactly. It's not their priority. And you're going to want to go to the gym and they're going to want to stay out late, or you're going to want to go to a salad bar for lunch and they're going to want to go to McDonald's, like whatever it is. Right. And it's the same thing with money. You need to bring yourself up. If that's what you're trying to do, then you need to surround yourself with people who are doing it too. Yeah.
That's amazing. So many helpful tips. I hope you guys are learning lots watching this. Let me know in the comments if you are finding this helpful. I know you have some resources for people that if they're looking to learn more about their money story or money blocks, or just to get started on their money mindset journey. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, so I have really great, I have one that's going to tie in really well with this, and that it's called the Abundance Maximizer, but it's going to give you journaling prompts. So you can kind of dig in. It starts with your money past, your money future, and your money past, money present, and money future. And you kind of go through. So that's going to help you dig into some of those stories that you might have heard when you were a kid and kind of put those to rest, talking about where you're at right now, and then talking about where you want to go and what beliefs you need to have to get there. So I'll leave a link for that. That one's a really good one. And then I think another one that I can link to as well is clearing money clutter. And it's like a checklist for kind of, I didn't talk about this today, but it is a really great, easy one for everyone. And it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not, I should mention, for either one of these. I'm trying to think if there's language in there that's geared towards being an entrepreneur. I don't think it's heavy on that, but if it is, just ignore the word entrepreneur, and everything in there you can do regardless. And then the clearing money clutter, I'll also give you a link for that one. And that's, like I said, it's a checklist, and it's just a few really helpful tips to just kind of go through and kind of gently clean up your money house. And there's a couple of, one of my favorite tips to recommend to clients in there, and that's doing a money date with yourself. And that's really, really good for anybody who has a tendency to avoid their money, want to keep their head in the sand like a bit of an ostrich when it comes to money. Or even if that's not you and you're kind of on top of things, it's still just a nice ritual that you can do. Same thing, don't make it stressful, play music, tea, wine, whatever it is. And just, have a Monday morning at 9:00 or Saturday morning at 10 and go to your favorite coffee shop. And then you're just like really focusing on your money. You can do all your money activities. If you have to transfer money, pay bills. If not, go through your credit card statements, make sure there's no, that everything is correct. You can just look at your money, think about your money goals, write down your money goals, whatever it is you want to do about money. And whether you take a half an hour, whether you take 5 minutes in the beginning and you move it up to an hour, like whatever it is, but it just gives you time to really think about your money in a non-threatening, oh my God, I have to pay all the bills. Like, reactive way, because you're kind of proactive and you're going in and you know that the bills are going to get paid and you know that it's going to happen on that day, that time. You don't have to worry about bills any other time of the week, which, let's face it, bills are stressful and annoying and everything else. So if you can minimize that to just this one point in the week, and then everything else just gets tossed and stored until that one time, and takes all that stress out of it.
Yeah,
so
I think
I'll send it on to you.
empowering to like know about your money, even if it's
100%. Even if you have none.
exactly.
And this is where this came from me, because this was years ago, but I was in a bunch of debt, and I have a tendency to just avoid when things are going good, I'm all in there. But when things start going bad, I'm like, oh my God, I just look at train wreck. I don't want to even look. But the stress that comes from the not having money and the being in debt and all of that comes from it is actually coming from the avoidance, because you don't know what's going on in there. But when you actually go in and it's like, yeah, okay, it sucks to see that you're in the red every week, but then you can just make a plan. You can pay it off. The debt's going to go down. And going in every week, if the situation is exactly as bad as you knew it was, well, then it's exactly as bad as you knew it was. But it's very empowering to know exactly how much is there. And then you can, make nothing's, because what happens when you avoid it, obviously, a credit card might go over its balance, but because you didn't pay attention. And now you have a late charge or an over, whatever it's called, over your balance charge, whatever it's called. That happens, or something doesn't get paid on time and now there's a late charge. And those are all things that you could have avoided. So when you're sitting there later and you're like, oh God, I could have stopped that. I could have stopped that. Now you're feeling way worse. And you feel a lot worse than if you just saw the number that you were avoiding seeing, but you already knew it was there anyways. So it's very empowering when you can get in and you know what everything is. And when you go in and there's no surprises, it's very empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite is like finding money that you didn't even know was there. And then you're like, yes, I can buy this thing that I've been putting off for so long because I didn't think I had enough to buy it, but you really did.
Yeah, but there it is. Yeah. And that stuff happens, right? And then there's also that saying that what you focus on grows. So if you're in there every week looking at your money versus like, no, it helps grow it for sure. And I have so many stories of when I wanted to save a lot of money quickly or make a lot of money quickly. The more I focused on that money, the more like just random things would happen. Like checks would just appear in the mail. And I'm like, I'm convinced, you cannot convince me otherwise, that it wasn't because I was paying attention to it. Because when I don't pay attention to it, all I get is bills. Like random bills that come in the mail. But when I'm actually paying attention, the money starts to shift around in your favor.
Yeah, that's amazing. You shared so much stuff. I'm so grateful to have you over here. And I guess, why don't you share where people can find you, where they can follow you, get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah. So my name might be a little bit hard to spell, but my handles are all the same across everywhere. So I'm the only Christa Cheverie on social media, which is nice. So it's at Christa Cheverie, and I'll put the link in the comments for the freebies. So you'll see the spelling, but it's just at Christa Cheverie. So you can get me on Instagram. You can get me on Facebook, my Facebook page. I have a Facebook group as well called the Savvy Money Mindset. You can join that. And just send me a PM or a DM if you want to chat more, if you're curious about what I offer, or if you're curious if it would be a good fit for you, just send me a message and we can have a chat and figure it out.
Yeah. Amazing. That sounds great. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Thanks so much for being here, Christa. It's been so lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. So nice to be here.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.